يكالو كل زكالو نبدا كالم يقولون انزل كايم ترى كايم درو كل بيت كان تاي تقمالو عمل كايم عاتهم سلولو نادو نقبح الدينامير لو نادو نقبح الدينامير لو يكالو جبنا يكالو
In 1975, the Eritrean Revolution launched a major offensive against the Ethiopian occupation forces. By the end of 1977, the entire countryside and almost all the important towns were in the hands of the revolution. All its communication lines cut off, the enemy remained totally encircled, and isolated in the few towns it still held under constant pressure. Asmara, the capital, was menaced by the Eritrean People's Liberation Army, and its imminent fall was to signal total victory. The Eritrean national liberation struggle is today the longest ongoing armed struggle in Africa. For almost 18 years now, the Eritrean people have been fighting against successive Ethiopian colonial regimes and their allies for their rightful national independence and social emancipation. Having initially been limited to rural guerrilla activities, mostly because of internal problems, the revolution soared forward politically and militarily with the creation and consolidation of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. The experience of the protracted armed struggle has favored the development of a new concept of the struggle for national independence based on the unity of the national struggle with that of social transformation. In the liberated villages and towns, the EPLF has organized the Eritrean masses, forming worker, peasant, women, youth, and student organizations. In these areas, a whole process of fundamental political, economic, and social transformation is afoot. A progressive land reform to the interest of the oppressed peasants has been effectuated. Big industries and commercial farms nationalized. Roads, schools, hospitals, and workshops constructed, and cooperative farms and shops set up. People's assemblies have been elected from the organized masses, and effective political power passed to their hands. Thus is being laid the basis of the future Eritrean society. At present, the fiercest battles are being fought in Eritrea. The Eritrean people are facing single-handedly the totally mobilized Ethiopian army, equipped with the most sophisticated modern weapons, and aided by Soviet officers and technicians. The very concentrated blanket bombing of the liberated cities, villages, schools, hospitals, refugee centers, and the strategic bases of the EPLF is being carried out at a level and intensity never seen before in the 18-year history of the Eritrean Revolution. Napalm, cluster, and incendiary bombs continue to rain down, leading to the barbaric massacre of people and the destruction of property. The condition of the more than 200,000 civilians who have to take refuge in the liberated areas has thus been further aggravated by hunger and disease. Yet there is almost total international silence on this most barbaric war of aggression and genocide. The suffering of a people whose only crime is to dare to defy any force that comes to subjugate them passes almost unnoticed. The Ethiopian military junta continues to capitalize on this silence. Taking it as complicity, it has continued to seek a military solution, to the point of inviting the intervention of foreign troops when all its attempts to crush the revolution were all but totally frustrated.
plane came, we lay down. We did not move anymore. The first time 3 planes came, and then 3 more came again. They came to spy and they left. After that, 2 came back again to bomb us. At the end, all of us were hit somewhere or another.
At
nightfall, the wounded were brought here. There were more than 100 of them, all civilians, most of them women and children. The Ethiopians, they told us, were continuously bombing the column of refugees who were escaping from Keren, all the way from Keren to Afabet. 4 MiG planes continued to bomb for a period of 1 hour. The Ethiopian military junta had been organizing one offensive after another to gain a decisive military victory in Eritrea. Simultaneously, it continued to raise a tactical call for a peaceful solution in order to isolate the Eritrean revolution from international support and to gain needed time to stabilize itself politically and strengthen itself militarily. For although the EPLF made certain tactical withdrawals in the south, it maintained its most strategic base areas and the towns under its control, inflicting enormous losses on the enemy. Not only did its last all-out June 78 offensive fail, but it also became clear that the regime was incapable of rallying any new force that could face the totally mobilized Eritrean people, whose determination and fighting experience has been steeled through 18 years of armed struggle. It was at this stage that the fascist Ethiopian junta sought the direct military intervention of the Soviet Union and Cuba on a massive scale. The Soviet Union fully agreed, and what had hitherto been rearguard support escalated into a full-scale intervention in all aspects of the war. Creating an air bridge, the Soviet Union had, within a short emergency period, transported an enormous quantity of arms. With these lethal weapons, the Ethiopian-Soviet offensive started in November 1978, under the command of 2 Soviet generals. More than 2,000 Soviet military personnel were also involved in combat at different levels. Relieved by Cuban soldiers in the Ogaden and other parts of Ethiopia, new forces were also brought in, raising the number of the Ethiopian army to more than 120,000. With the direct participation of the Soviet Union, the nature of the war has totally changed. The Eritrean people are no longer facing an African army, but a major world power, with the highest sophistication of weapons and techniques.
In the village, I was working in the clandestine cells of the front. With the retreat, I was obliged to stop my activity and leave my home. My destiny is with the revolution. If victory comes soon, it's good. If not, we must confront reality. I can't stop in the middle. The enemy is sustaining heavy loss each day. On the other side, the front has evacuated all its property.
How do you see the future?
Fighting and back with victory.
Eritrea has a separate historical development into nationhood from Ethiopia. And its federal relation with Ethiopia was an imperialist contrived neo-colonial arrangement. It was on this basis that the Soviet Union strongly argued for the immediate independence of Eritrea in 1950, when the issue was discussed in the United Nations. Soviet intervention in Eritrea is thus not based on revolutionary principles, but considerations of national strategic interest in the region. Big Ethiopia is seen as a favorable ally in the execution of that interest, rather than revolutionary but small and politically independent Eritrea. This lack of principled justification is also the reason why the Soviet Union continues to deny its direct military intervention in Eritrea. After a serious appraisal of the new situation, the EPLF decided to withdraw from Keren and the towns on the Eastern Front, changing its tactic from positional defense in those areas to mobile and guerrilla warfare. In this orderly withdrawal, the fighters, militias, mass organizations, and transport units have shown unsurpassed heroism in moving the wounded, the school children, the refugees, and even whole factories and hospitals to new, safer base areas. The military and material capacity of the EPLF to continue the struggle and gain the initiative has thus been preserved. Besides the massacre and displacement of civilians and the destruction of property, the worst effect of this fascist offensive has been the disruption of the fundamental social and economic transformation which was in process in the areas reoccupied by the enemy. But although the context has been disrupted, the popular base and organizational framework remains intact. In the valleys, deep in the strategic base areas, work continues in building new shelters, schools, hospitals, garages, workshops, and roads, which continue to function fully, defying all the enemy's attempts at destruction. For the real base of the revolution is not the cities and towns, but the organized and conscious Eritrean masses. In the process of the political and armed struggle for national independence and liberation, a true political vanguard that can guarantee the continuation and advance of the revolution towards the establishment of a new socialist order in Eritrea has been created in the EPLF. The unity of the Eritrean people has been solidified and their political consciousness raised. Defying any military pressure, the EPLF is continuing this process, consolidating the class consciousness of the fighters and intensifying the politicization of the masses through regular seminars, publications, and daily radio programs. Thus, the Eritrean people's determination to persist in struggle and their conviction in their final victory remains firm. To accentuate this confidence and the revolutionary morale, on May the 8th, for instance, International Women's Day was celebrated with a resounding echo throughout the liberated areas, even under the most forbidding of conditions. The revolutionary women shouted, "The day of reckoning will come, fascist Derg. We shall soon be back with greater force." The rugged terrain of the present base areas is favorable to guerrilla and mobile warfare. Soon, a large part of the People's Liberation Army and People's Militia, which has been tied up in the process of moving and constructing the new base areas, will be released to attack the enemy in every corner. The military strategy of the EPLF is to avoid, at the moment, positional defense, to preserve its human and material capacity, and to prepare for protracted war. This will initially involve guerrilla and mobile warfare, attacking and harassing the enemy in every zone to divide his forces. The Ethiopian regime is facing tremendous economic and political problems inside Ethiopia as a result of its war of aggression. Despite all its frantic attempts to convince the world that it has finished the Eritrean liberation struggle, it is beginning to swallow the bitter truth that even with Soviet involvement, it is impossible to crush the determined resistance of the Eritrean people. The EPLF is already counterattacking the enemy with mobile and guerrilla units in the south and east and around the capital, carrying out brilliant operations and destroying military convoys, arms depots, and other military installations. This has frustrated the enemy's striking capacity in the north. The enemy's advance is thus nearing its limits, and the slow but sure-footed counteroffensive is on the move. This is within the context of the front's general military strategy of recapturing the smaller garrisons, cutting the enemy's communication lines, encircling the bigger cities, and recapturing them. Indeed, in this protracted war, time is the ally of the popular revolution.
تزعن مركب حمس بقلاي عود قريبا أبي زلوت